Nobody becomes a first responder because their goal in life gets stinking filthy rich. When you chose this profession, you chose a life of sacrifice. You're never going to be a famous celebrity, at least not in a good way.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Life Boost here. My name is Ryan Barrio, and I would like to thank you all for watching and listening to my content. Today, I'm speaking with Lt.Col David Grossman. David Grossman is an American author and trainer who conducts seminars on the psychology of lethal force. He is a retired lieutenant colonel in the United States Army. He's the author of 4 books, 2 children's books, and 6 non-fictional books, including his book called On Killing, with over 500,000 copies sold, and New York Times best-selling book co-authored with Glenn Beck. Dave is also a former U.S. Army Ranger, paratrooper, and West Point psychology professor. He has a black belt in Hojutsu, which is a martial art of the firearm, and has been inducted into the USA Martial Arts Hall of Fame for this. Colonel Grossman's research was mentioned by the President of the United States in a national address and also has testified before the U.S. Senate, the U.S. Congress, and much more. He has served as an expert witness and consultant in state and federal courts. This man has helped train mental health professionals after several school shootings that occurred in the United States. He has been involved with assisting in the Jonesboro school massacre and has been involved in counseling or court cases in the aftermath of Paducah, Springfield, Littleton, and Nickel Mines Amish school massacres. Since his retirement from the U.S. Army in 1998, he has been on the road almost 300 days a year for over 19 years as one of our nation's leading trainers for military, law enforcement, mental health providers, and school safety organizations. It is a pleasure to be introducing David Grossman onto my show. Welcome.
Hey, thanks, Ryan. I don't know who that guy is you're talking about. He needs to go get a life.
Yeah, he sounds like a true hero.
I don't know about that. It's been a good ride. It's been a lot of fun. I'm honored to be on board with you. You know, something I always try to say up front with these podcasts. When I was a kid, we had 3 networks. And 1 or 2 newspapers in every city, and maybe 6 national magazines. And if you didn't get on them, there was no way your voice would ever be heard. Today, the podcast revolution has completely exploded. That the logjam that the media has. This is an era of citizen journalism like nothing we've ever seen before. And 100 years from now, people will tune back into this and listen to this. And the same way we read a 100-year-old book today. So I honor you for taking the time and the energy to put this together. And most of all, I honor your listeners. You know, I've been on 60 Minutes in 2020 and BBC and CBC, and, they're never more than a 4-minute soundbite. You have no control over what's coming over there. People listening to podcasts are seeking a deeper level of knowledge. And it's a knowledge revolution, it's information revolution, it's citizen journalism. And I honor you and I honor your listeners for making all this possible. And I'm tickled to be part of that process and eager to be of service with the great kind of the little ministry that you have, a wellness and life boost to your listeners.
Thank you so much for implementing your thoughts about this, and by you even coming onto my show is an honor and a privilege. And it's going to be great to dig into a lot of insight and knowledge about yourself and really try to help people within overall health, right? And I think that's the biggest goal. And it really is a pleasure to have you. And thank you for sharing that. What does your daily routine look like as an author and trainer?
Well, Ryan, I don't have a very specific routine. One of the only thing that I'm just absolutely religious about is my sleep management. I'm 65 years old. I'm still in real good shape, really in the prime of my health. And I've got 2 dogs. I take them out for a good long walk once a day, try to fit that in somewhere. And we go at a pretty good pace. But other than that, there's not a whole lot. I fast 2 days a week. So it's kind of a 32-hour fast, from all day Tuesday. So from Monday night until Wednesday morning, I have nothing but fluids, no sugar, no anything else. And I think there's an awful lot of data on how good fasting is for us. Our bodies are meant for feast or famine. And so it also helps a lot with keeping the weight down. And that's so important. As you get older, it just gets harder and harder. So really like a 32-hour fast. It's 24 hours plus a sleep cycle. So 2 sleep cycles and 1 day cycle. But, I'll go to bed Monday night knowing that the next day I'll have nothing. And then Wednesday morning, I'll break my fast and usually have a good breakfast or something. And then the same thing on Friday. My wife and I, throughout the pandemic, kind of put us on a feeding schedule where all of our eating happens within a 6-hour window. And that's really helped a lot too. For us at 1300, 1 o'clock is when we really break our fast on a daily basis. And then about 7, we wrap everything up. So all of the eating we try to do is in a 6-hour window. We actually have just a little bit of a treat later in the night for ourselves, but we found that to work well. And again, the body's really made for this kind of feast to famine type thing. Work out well. I do an awful lot of supplements to try to sustain it. One that I started recently, just do an online search for COVID and lactoferrin. There have been a couple of major studies showing how good lactoferrin is done. Just recent, good, solid studies. My daily routine, one is my favorite website is ScienceDaily.com. I check it every day through almost every category. So, and then I check the news quickly and then do my email. And then, time that's left over, I try to do a little writing on a daily basis. And so that's kind of what the day looks like. And one of the things we could really spend more time on in a few minutes, I think, is the sleep dynamic. It's really a major area where, as a civilization, we're being blindsided. And there's so much we can do in that field, and so much I think we can give your listeners in that field.
Yeah, and it's going to be really interesting to really engage on that topic and to really identify what some of the key core issues that is related in regards to sleep and trying to find a solution towards that problem, right? And it's great that you're applying fasting in your daily lifestyle also, because when you're fasting, you're allowing that time in your digestive system to actually take everything out of your system, but also you're also preventing a lot of other nutritional issues, right? Such as gout, such as high blood pressure, diabetes, always affecting the pancreas, right? So it's amazing that you were able to identify that and say, hey, for 2 days out of the week, I'm not going to be eating, right? I'm not going to be doing any of that. I'm going to focus on my body and other aspects. And that's incredible. Right. So, and we're going to be diving deep into about sleep also and having a great understanding of that. What made you want to start training law enforcement and mental health providers?
Well, I was in the Army from 74 to 98. And about 94, my book on killing came out. I was a West Point psych professor. And it was a great gig. It's just one of those little in their military career. They'll send you to grad school for 2 years and then 3 years as a professor and then off to other jobs. And it was just wonderful. It was so cool. But I had my book on killing out, and which, as you kindly said up front, it came out while I was at West Point, which is a big deal. We're academia and publishing is good and a book is good. And the book has really been amazing. And I studied the psychology of killing. And then I got out in 98, and a lot of law enforcement agencies were calling me in to train them. A lot of the military called me in to train them. The book had taken off. It's translated into 7 languages, 500,000 copies sold in English, But as I started working with this community, prior to the war, prior to 9/11, the only ones that were in real combat every day were law enforcement. And I do a lot with corrections. I always try to take a minute. I know you are, and some of your listeners may be from that corrections community. They don't ever really get the respect they deserve. I always, in every law enforcement audience, how many all were, corrections, probation, parole, jail, I say, I honor you. I publicly honor you. And you hear that a lot more often. You look in the eyes of scary people every day. The world's a better place because they're behind bars, and we thank you for what you do. So, I'm working with that community, the feds really, and the law enforcement. And I began to study what I thought what was at the core of combat was killing. And I wrote the book, and Google Scholar says it's been cited over 3,000 times in scholarly works. It's really one of the great, kind of scholarly works of our time. But I realized that for those who fully prepared themselves, the Vietnam vets I interviewed were 18. The World War II vets I interviewed were 18 when they had to kill. But for a mature individual who's prepared themselves for a lifetime, it seems to trouble some kind of people. But for those who fully prepared themselves, killing's just not that big a deal. People want them to be destroyed by it. Well, they're not. The people who came back from World War II were not destroyed by what they had to do. What I began to realize is what was at the core of combat was all the stuff I put in a book called On Combat, which is also, it's got 1/3 of a million copies sold worldwide and translated to 5 languages. And we found about auditory exclusion and slow motion time and tunnel vision. Hunters know that when they shoot a deer, they don't hear the shot. But the same thing happens in combat. How could we have had 700 years of gunpowder combat and not let people know the shots get quiet? So the focal point of all of my stuff has revolved around protecting. I wrap up every presentation with the big love up there, with my double markers, and I do a real dynamic presentation. I find from the Canadian standpoint that one of the highest honors our Native American or host nation Aboriginal can grant is called a blanket ceremony. I've received that blanket ceremony twice. Once from law enforcement in Tennessee, the chief, as I presented to the tribal police, presented it to me, and then again the red one there is the British Columbia Aboriginal Policing Service. And they again presented me with the blanket ceremony. And it's really a beautiful ceremony. They drape it over you, they fold it over you, and it represents their desire for your protection, their desire for your wellness. And that's the whole goal for me is resiliency and wellness. And the armor, and the sword, they'll still represent instruments of protection. They really stand there to take the individual. My goal becomes resiliency, and this law enforcement world is a very interesting world. That they get the acid test every day. If you teach something stupid and people get killed, they stop doing that. If you teach something that works, they embrace it. So here I've been now. It's been 24 years since I retired. I've been on the road over 200 days a year, with the exception of the pandemic. And because they're the ones that called me. I didn't choose that field. They chose me. I wrote the book about what I thought was at the heart of combat. Then I wrote a second book. I had the honor to train almost all of the Canadian regiments that rotated in and out of Afghanistan. Early in the war, Afghanistan was Canada's first shooting war since Korea. They really wanted to do it right. And the first regiment that deployed to Iraq or to Afghanistan, they did everything they could do. Just everything they could think of, including bringing me to brief them. And then they brought them back and said, all right, lads, what worked? They said, Grossman. He told us what was going to happen. He told us what to do about it. Of all the things that were done, I'm so humbled and honored. They said, Grossman. And really that same cycle happened over and over again with Canadian regiments going in the war. What worked? Grossman. He told us what was going to happen. And for all of you that are interested in that, it's all in my book on combat. I literally wrote the book for my son on his first combat tour, the invasion of Afghanistan. And the early draft was for my son, who now has 9 combat tours. And it's the nuts and bolts I want somebody to understand about what's in combat. So it's been a funny world, and they chose me. And I've never once advertised. I just, I'm going, and they bring me out, and they said, this stuff works. I need them in my unit and my outfit. And it's a funny thing, law enforcement in America is completely decentralized. Nobody else in the world, I think, does anything like this. The sheriff, there are 3,000 sheriffs in America, and they only answer to the local voters once every 4 years. There's no other way to get rid of the sheriff. He's a force of nature. And then we have over 12,000 police chiefs only answer to the mayor, once every 4 years. And so people don't understand. We have, people talk about America being 50 laboratories for democracy, and in the pandemic, we saw what Florida did and what California did. We saw what what Texas did and what New York did. Okay, what worked? 50 laboratories for democracy. Well, in law enforcement, we're 15,000 laboratories for democracy, not counting all the foreign nations I've worked in, including Canada many, many times. And within that 15,000 laboratories for democracy, they keep bringing me back. And my books, one book came out in 95 and it's Amazon's #1 bestseller in a couple categories just last week. The other book came out in 2004 and it was Amazon's #1 bestseller in several categories this year. And it's just been an ongoing interactive process about understanding what happens to the human body under stress and what we can do about that. And of course, like I said, there's so many things that we can teach and apply. It's in my book on combat. And the medical community has just embraced on combat. And it was Amazon's #1 bestseller in several medical categories this year. Because I was on a medical podcast and for all of England's ER docs, and the guy said basically if it works in combat, it works in the ER. Stress is stress. And so that whole dynamic applies across the board. And that's a kind of a long-winded answer to this process, which I'm still in the middle of. Like I said, 65 years old. I pray that I can still be out on the road 200 days a year doing what I do. It's been a great ride. And my most recent book is on spiritual combat. We got on killing, we got on combat, on spiritual combat. And in a way, that spiritual dynamic is part of it, but it all comes back to love, and you have to be kind to yourself first. You have to take care of yourself first. Self-love can go too far. And it's our love for others, which is why we're willing to sacrifice. Why will somebody die for strangers? How do you get EMS, fire, police? How do you get somebody to die, to go into a building and die for people that don't even know? Well, there's only one force on the planet. Mama critter will die to save her babies. Soldiers in combat will die to save their fellow soldiers. And it all comes back to love and that desire to protect. And that's been the great epic cycle of my life now for 24 years since I retired out here doing this. It comes back to protecting, to loving, to preserving, and dedicating yourself. Nobody does what you do. Nobody becomes a first responder because their goal in life gets stinking filthy rich. When you chose this profession, you chose a life of sacrifice. You're never going to be a famous celebrity, at least not in a good way. So you got to believe that your sacrifice is for a noble and worthy purpose. And that's one of the things I emphasize a lot with the class and the dynamics, and to your audience, if you're out there following the path to glory, good for you. If you're out there following the path to money, good for you, but most of you are in a profession where you're never going to get rich and you're never going to get famous. Well, why are you doing that? I do it because I love my family, I love my children, I love my grandchildren, I love my nation, I love my God, and I want to make the world a better place. I want to take the time and skills I've been given to try to make the world a better place. And I think most people in this service field are the same way. And our roots all lie back to self-sacrifice and love and that determination to try to make the world a better, safer place, and for your children, for your grandchildren, for your future, for your nation. And it all comes back around to protecting and to loving. And we fight and we die for that which we love. And there's no other force on the planet. You can't order someone to die. What do? Kill me if I don't do it? There's no other force on the planet that can sincerely motivate people to put their life on the line. Is love.
Truly an incredible insight and perspective that we have within law enforcement, understanding that love needs to come first. You need to love who you are. You need to take that time for your well-being and understand that, yes, if you are in the career of law enforcement or if you are in the career of emergency services, you're sometimes not going to be the hero, if that makes sense, right? A lot of people look at it as, you're in that situation, you're in high stressful events, you're dealing with things that people don't want to deal with on a daily basis. And why? And it all leads back to loving who you are and having that care for other people, right? And being ready for combat.
Yeah. And a good example is, you may have heard it before, but you're in an aircraft with a small child, oxygen mask comes down. What do you do before you put the child's mask on? You put your mask on
your own first.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Before you can help anybody else survive, you have to survive yourself. You can't help anybody else if you're not surviving. And so you've got to live it. You've got to be a model of thriving. You've got to be a model of perseverance and thriving and wellness. And, you're like this guru that people are going to turn to. And you've got to follow your own precepts. You got to be a living model of what you got to practice what you preach along lines of wellness. And, our body catches up on us. The weight catches up. There's things that we can't control. We do our best, but we're constantly striving to take care of ourselves so that we can take care of others. And if you can't take care of yourself, then then your mission fails. And so love begins with yourself. Kindness begins with yourself, and knowing that this is the instrument, this is the tool. Everything else is just a tool. I am the weapon. And so that this is the weapon, the tool, the instrument that you're using in your pursuit, and you've got to care for it to the best of your ability.
Yeah, it's a very powerful tool that you just said, where it can really change your life and create a huge impact for you to become a better leader for yourself, right? And to really try to make the better decisions within your lifestyle. Because like you said, everybody has that decision to be better every day. And it's our choice to love and to not love, right?
Yeah.
When you are a first responder, what are some tips that you could give to them about combat psychology, ways on how to handle their tunnel vision, ways on how to handle these stressful situations?
Yeah. Well, one of the things that I teach is that tactical breathing. And I've got hundreds of case studies. They've been sent by email, they've been sent by letter, and they're organized by topic. And of all the topics, the biggest folder by far is the breathing exercise. People using it in all kinds of situations. And again, let's make sure we leave plenty of time to cover sleep, because it's worthy of another presentation all by itself. But let's talk about the breathing. And sympathetic nervous system is the fight or flight response. And then parasympathetic backlash. When the danger is gone, you backlash in the opposite direction. So, sympathetic is fight or flight. And then the backlash is rest and digest, sometimes called feed and breed. So you got what we call the 4 F's: fight or flight, feed and breed, right? The 4 F's, right? So when there's this, you're in this life and death event, and then there's a backlash, and you're in the feed and breed mode. A lot of people gorge themselves. There's nothing wrong with that. And a lot of people, and it happens to victims of violent crime. It happens to fire EMS. They go home and they have really intense sex. And it's just like grasping for life in the face of death. Is that both partners are very invested in some very intense sex. And it's a biological backlash, but it's also a beautiful grasping for life in the face of death. But it scares people. They're a victim of violent crime. And, I just did a podcast a while back for all of the U.S. Army's sexual assault and harassment investigators and counselors. And I said, this is a normal biological backlash. Some people might paint it as promiscuity. You need to be able to discern whether or not it is. And you need to understand the degree to which these are normal biological responses. And so when these things happen to crime victims or others, it scares us. But the real danger is when we begin to relive the event. You talk about it, you think about it, and you're in that sympathetic nervous system arousal again. And that is not PTSD, it's normal. It becomes PTSD when you try to not think about it. You will literally drive yourself crazy. You will literally drive yourself crazy down the path of PTSD trying to not think about it. You got to separate the memory from the emotions. So one of the tools we use is a breathing exercise, and I'll teach that in just a minute. But we found a shortcut. We found a powerful shortcut to pull people from sympathetic to parasympathetic, and that's taking a big drink of water. Taking a big drink of water is a natural way to breathe. And we'll talk later about breathing properly. taking a big drink of water also sends a powerful message that says we're safe. But think of a deer being chased by a wolf, right? Can he stop and get a drink? He's really thirsty. I can't get a drink. I'm being chased by a wolf. The fact that you stop and take that big swig of water sends a powerful biological message that says we're safe, right? So the process of debriefing and the process of healing is having them talk about the incident and not having that sympathetic nervous system come along for the ride. And what we would typically do is when people start to become emotional, they stop and breathe or regain control. Today, we put a bottle of water in front of them. A friend of mine is one of our nation's leading therapists for federal agents. And she started using it. She'd debrief them and with that bottle of water in front of them. Every time they started to become emotional, to make them stop, take a swig of water. And she told me, she said 6 years of college, 14 years of practice, and that stupid bottle of water is doing more good than anything I've ever done. And I teach at CISM, Critical Incident Stress Management. I'm one of their trainers at their conference almost every year. And we have the debriefing. We all know about the idea of a debriefing. Everybody sits around the table. Everybody that's involved. Think about the dispatcher. Think about the crime scene folks. But everybody you can bring on board sits around the table and talk about what happened. Now, in the military, we all understand the after-action review, the hot wash, and the learning that comes from it. But also during the debriefing, we fill in the memory gaps and sort out the memory distortions. And we separate the memory from the emotion. Because everybody sits there with a bottle of water in front of them. As they talk about what happened, the moment they start to become emotional, they stop and take a swig of water. I tell a cop, let's say you're getting a witness statement from a victim of a crime. If that individual becomes emotional while they talk about what happened, A, you don't need all that drama. B, they're moving down the path of mental illness. So put a bottle of water in front of them, just the power of a gift. Crack the seal and put a bottle of water in front of them. And every time that individual starts to become emotional, make them stop, take a big swig of water. A, you're getting the calm, rational statement that you need. B, you send them down the path of mental wellness. So let's take that model just one step further, right? Fight or flight, feed and breed. And the action of taking a big swig of water puts you in that feed and breed, rest and digest mode. So I was training a major U.S. Spec Ops unit, and the master sergeant that was my host, his wife was an emergency room psychiatrist. And she told him about something sweeping through the ER around the world. You got a crackhead or a meth head, somebody's tearing up your emergency room. You know what they do? They grab a bag of M&Ms. They rip it open, they shove a guy's face, which is like some M&Ms. And a very large portion of the time, completely defuse the situation. Now, the Spec Ops guy told me the story. He said, I'm your typical cynical guy. I blew it off. Yeah, right. Touchy-feely, goofy, psych stuff. Yeah, sure. This kind of guy in America, this kind of guy that carries off duty, kind of guy we want to. He said 2 different times, I'm off duty with my wife, thought I'm going to draw my gun and fight for our lives. He said both times, my wife reaches in her purse, grabs a bag of M&Ms, rips it open, shoves the guy's face, which like some M&Ms, and completely defused the situation. He said, I'm still kind of a cynical guy. He said, it's one thing when a pretty girl does it, but I've seen it work. So just take that, just seeing a bag of M&Ms, thinking about eating, is a tool that we can use to calm people down. I give you one more example. Now, this is way out there. I'm not holding this up as reality, but it's interesting. I taught all this, and I was during a break in a class, and a cop comes up to me, and he brings his partner with him. Because it's such a wild story. He brought his partner to vouch for the story. They got a naked guy in the front yard, screaming and throwing things inarticulate, and parents on the porch, don't shoot our kid, don't shoot our kid. Now, naked guys usually mean something's wrong. And usually what you're looking at is what we call excited delirium. Their body goes into overdrive. They're capable of great feats of strength. They are not rational, and they're hot. They're running a fever. The reason why they're naked is they took their clothes off because they're hot. And I think it's the state the berserkers used to get into. We talk about the berserkers who get naked. And you're burning. You've got a biochemical fuel to the body that you otherwise would never access. And I tell people that if you have a naked guy die on you, you have somebody take a temperature. Have the EMS guys take a temperature. If that guy's running a temperature, something happened, and you didn't do it. That's excited delirium. Now, was this excited delirium? We don't know, right? Naked guy in the yard screaming and throwing things, and cops said, me and my partner looked at it, it's like, what the hell are we supposed to do? And he said, I happen to have a Snickers bar in my hand. I thought, what the hell? I said, hey, buddy, you want a Snickers bar? Huh? You want a Snickers bar? Huh? Well, would you like a Snickers bar? Yeah. Oh, follow me up room, I'll give it to you. Follow me up to your room and I'll give it to you. Let my room get, was it a good sign of delirium? Would it work again? We don't know. But it represents that whole dynamic of pulling people from fight or flight to rest and digest. And in the heat of battle, tunnel vision, auditory exclusion, slow motion time, scanning breaks tunnel vision. And you want to do that, but we got to train for that. What we want to do is reduce that huge roller coaster ramp up. And the way we do that, stress inoculation and confidence and state-of-the-art training. And, EMS, state-of-the-art training means, you've got, live tissue training. You might have a pig or a goat that you're doing an operation on. A lot of times people will have stress inoculation. They'll have loud noises, they'll have flickering lights. One thing that they often overlook, one of the most important in any stress inoculation, is smells. Smells are very primal and impactful sense. And anybody who's been around dead and dying or terribly injured, very, very much, people crap themselves. It's very common. They're devastated by it. It's your body's natural response. Tell somebody, that's your body's natural response. It happens all the time. Don't worry about it. You can literally save somebody from a lifetime of shame and despair by telling them that's your body's natural response. But the smell of death, there's blood, but there's also crap and there's piss. Have somebody take a dump in a bucket. And that's your source of that smell. It smells very primal, and the smell of urine and maybe, another bucket with some cow blood or something in there. And those smells are so powerful. But when we encounter that in training, when the real thing happens, then we don't panic. I've been here once before. Training should be a form of stress inoculation. And you try to make it stressful, but never make it so stressful that they fail. You can ramp up the stress over time. Start easy. Always try to send a winner off your training site. Don't make it so hard that everybody fails. All you prove is that you're an idiot. Your success is when everybody can come out the other end of the training. Hey, that didn't work out right. We're going to do that one again. I don't want you to worry about it. But let's do your breathing. Have a swig of water, regain control. The breathing exercise, like I said, you can always have a swig of water. You can always stop and breathe. And of all the things I teach across all the years, it's the one that people have been using the most. A guy sent me an email just a couple of months ago, said, don't let people tell you that combat breathing doesn't work. You can hear me doing it over the radio. I had a guy send me an email. He said he'd been in my class. And he deployed to Iraq and seen an awful lot of combat, came home. And it was not PTSD, but he was shaking off some cobwebs. And he was, so he and some friends were mountain climbing. And he said, we camped overnight on the top of this big glacier, going to go for the summit the next day. And I woke up in the night and I was completely disoriented. And I'm wandering around without traction devices on this slippery glacier, completely disoriented. And I heard your voice say, breathe in through the nose, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2, 3, 4. Out through the lips, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2, 3, 4. And he said, I regained control. And I realized I was literally, I'll show you the email. I was literally one step away from stepping off a cliff. And it saved my life. And that's an email. He and his wife had heard the audio book. Now, I do the audios of all my books, and they were well received. They'd heard the audio of my book on combat. He said his wife was in a medical emergency, a tube down her throat, gagging and choking, truly a life and death situation. And she scrawls on a piece of paper, can't talk, right? Tube down her throat, scrawls on a piece of paper, Grossman, breathing. He said, I knew exactly what she meant. I began to coach her. In through the nose, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2, 3, 4. And she regained control and literally saved her life. So with all that said, I want to talk you through the breathing, you and your listeners. It's a powerful tool to reach out and grab conscious control of the unconscious part of your body. You can control your heart rate. You can control your blood pressure if you control your breathing. Now, I want to add that I think the act of counting is part of what makes it work. My dog counts like this: 1, 2, a whole bunch. That's all a dog can handle. That's all it can handle. A dog can't count past 2. 1, 2, a bunch. And so the actual act of counting 2, 3, 4 is taking your intellect, is taking the forebrain and reaching down and grabbing control of the midbrain. You're using the force of your intellect to reach out and grab control of your body. You can bring your heart rate down. You can bring your blood pressure down doing this. So a couple of things on the breathing. Number one, mindfulness is good stuff. I'm a big fan of mindfulness. But this is not mindfulness. This is combat breathing. Keep your eyes open. Now, I have a class of 100 people. I'll tell them that. And sure enough, 1 or 2 will close their eyes. This is what we call a training scar. They were taught mindfulness. They close their eyes. Don't close your eyes. It's a life and death event. The bad guy's looking. You need to look too, right? Eyes open. Unscrew the natural stress response. A newborn baby's got that response. Head goes down, hands come up, pull the head back, pull the shoulders back. And this might be the most important part of all. Absolutely relax the stomach. We're going to do what's called belly breathing. A friend of mine wrote a book called Breathe, about the science of breathing. And she talks about right up until 5 years old, kids have always got that adorable little pot belly. Somewhere around 5-year-old, we all learned the Superman pose. And that's not right. We look at, what we call primitive tribes, standing at the loincloths with their bellies hanging out. No, we're the ones who got it wrong. We didn't even know how to breathe. We're all hold that Superman pose and sucking our belly into real good, healthy breathing. As you breathe in, the stomach goes out. Just let that Twinkie tumor hang out there. As you breathe out, the stomach comes in. All right, so we're gonna do 3 breaths. We're gonna do the count. When we breathe in, stomach goes out. Relax that stomach completely. Breathe out, stomach comes in. Are you ready? All right, here we go. Yeah. 3 breaths. Eyes open, head back, shoulders back. Relax the stomach. In through the nose. 2, 3, 4. Hold. 2, 3, 4. Out through the lips. 2, 3, 4. Hold. 2, 3, 4. In through the nose. Deep, deep, deep. Hold. 2, 3, 4. Out through the lips. Deep, deep, deep. Hold. 2, 3, 4. In through the nose. 2, 3, 4. Hold. 2, 3, 4. Out through the lips. 2, 3, 4. Hold. 2, 3, 4. Simple exercise, true revolution. You don't always have a bottle of water.
Always.
You don't always have a bottle of water, but you can always breathe. Now practice that. For $20 on Amazon, I get a little finger clip. Gives my heart rate. I sit there, watch TV, and hyperventilate. Just fast, shallow breaths. Run my heart rate way up. Long, slow breaths, bring it down. Run it up, bring it down, right? So a little while back, I had to go in for a colonoscopy. That's why they shove a camera up your ass, yeah. And I'm wired for sound, right? I got my heart rate going. I got my blood pressure going. I thought, this is so cool. Run my blood pressure up, brought it down. Run it up, brought it down. My wife is smacking me. Stop that, stop that. I go to the dentist's office. Little dental assistant takes my blood pressure. Oh, that's kind of high for me. Hold on a second. Relax every muscle. Take 1 breath. Try it now. Whoa. Nobody can consciously control their blood pressure. Anybody can consciously control the blood pressure if you control your breathing. So with all that said now, the final piece of wellness that I give to every audience is the whole business on sleep. Because Ryan, that is, we're in the middle. Do an online search for global epidemic of sleep deprivation. And it's our intrusive media. It's the addictive video games. It's the binge watching TV shows. It's the internet never sleeps. We're on Facebook all night long, and it's killing us. It is literally killing us. And it's taken years off our life. And sleep deprivation is a key factor in suicides. Sleep deprivation makes you stupid. It impairs your judgment. And the ultimate stupid act is taking your life. You make a bad decision, never get a chance to rethink it. So some of the research tells us a sleep-deprived soldier is up to 5 times more likely to take their life. If you do an online search, look for meta-studies on suicide. And probably the single best meta-study on suicide, and just look at suicide and sleep, it'll come right up. It said not only is sleep deprivation a critical factor in suicide, it is the most remediable factor. It's the one we can do something about immediately. If you got a suicidal individual or anybody you're worried about, the most important thing you can give them is a warm meal. Take care of the body before you take care of the mind. A warm meal and a good night's sleep in a safe environment. And maybe that means you stand watch over them. Tell them, hey, I got your 6. I want you to have sleep. And I'm going to stand here. I'm going to watch your 6 while you sleep. I'm on guard duty. I got you covered. Whatever it takes. But just understand that sleep deprivation, suicides have exploded worldwide. Teen suicides, teenagers, 10, 11, 12-year-old, teenage girls' suicide rate has tripled per capita in America in just last decade. And it's a critical factor in teen suicides. Here's parenting 101 for the 21st century. When you send your kid to bed at night, take their cell phone away from them. No cell phone in the room, no laptop in the room. They have got to go to the room and sleep. So I was training a bunch of cops, and a cop came up during the break. And this guy was really shook up. His face was welled up, and I thought something's going on here. And he said, my little girl, he said, was an A student. And she said, Dad, it's embarrassing. You don't have to take my cell phone every night. You could trust me. He said, so I trust her. I let her keep her cell phone. He said, a little while later, she took her life. So my little girl took her life. And we never knew the hell she was living in until we looked at the text messages on her cell phone. Night after night of ceaseless, relentless, vicious bullying. And you can't just ignore this stuff. We're not wired that way. He said it was heartrending to watch her on her cell phone night after night, trying to defend herself all night long, trying to find somebody to stand up for her. He said, I understood my little girl was bullied to death. What I didn't understand until now, she was sleep deprived, tormented, and bullied to death in front of my eyes, and I let it happen. He said, I can't ignore that text message in the middle of the night. How could I expect my little girl to? He said, the one thing on earth I could have done for her was take her cell phone every night, let her turn off all the bad stuff in this room. So sleep's a key factor in a worldwide explosion of suicide. The new factor is also a new factor in a global explosion of traffic deaths. Now, decade after decade, we brought traffic deaths down. Airbags, seatbelts, technology, medical technology. And now everywhere, traffic deaths are back up. What is the new factor? Sleep deprivation. I had 3 teenage boys. Now I got teenage grandsons, and I knew a major killer of kids was traffic deaths. I made sure they all had airbags, and 2 out of 3 tested those airbags. And I made sure the seatbelt was buckled. Nobody ever told me the most important thing is to make sure they get a good night's sleep before they get behind the wheel of a vehicle. There's a reason why airline pilots and truck drivers are required to log enough sleep. Now, the third major cause of death that's exploded is opiate overdoses. Why opiates? Prescription opiates have always been there. Well, sleep deprivation creates chronic pain. The tendons and muscles never get a chance to fully relax. Doc, I heard all the time, give me a pill to fix. You don't need a pill. You need more sleep. And you need to knock off the caffeine shortly after lunch, because that caffeine is stopping you from getting deep cycle sleep. And those tendons and muscles never chance to fully relax. You got a worldwide epidemic of caffeine abuse, mega doses of caffeine, combined with sleep deprivation, and we'd never get full, rich, deep, restorative sleep. And one of the things that happens in deep, restorative sleep is the tendons and muscles fully relax. So sleep deprivation and bad quality sleep, and caffeine is the worst thing there, is causing this chronic pain. And people are turning to opiates, right? Well, why opiates? For pain. A global epidemic of sleep deprivation is the new factor. All the old problems are still there, but it's a new factor behind an explosion of suicides, every category, every group, except for those who have a job that demands sleep management. Like in the Army, pilots have virtually no suicides. Truck drivers have very low suicides because they've mandated sleep. But the people who don't have mandated sleeps, we can see a direct relationship between their sleep discipline and their suicides. Suicides, traffic deaths, and of course the opiate epidemic. But the head of Netflix, you can look this up, the head of Netflix said their number one competitor was not other online providers. Their number one competitor was sleep. The corporate policy of Netflix is to steal your sleep. They don't care that it's killing you. They don't care that it's destroying your marriage because it destroys your judgment. You say things and do things you regret for the rest of your life. They don't care it's taken years off your life. They just want to sell their product. And so the video game industry, the online industry, all of these people who want you to absorb that, the video game industry will never say, you've been playing this game for 24 hours, you need to turn it off. Then Facebook will never say, you've been online for 24 hours, dude, it's time for you to turn it off. They'll never tell you that. Netflix will never say, man, you've been binge watching shows all night long for the last 3 nights. You need to get some sleep. They will never tell you that. They want to sell their product. And so we've got this worldwide dynamic and this global epidemic, and people don't even want to go there. They don't want to look at that because it points a finger back at them. The media, the video game industry, the social media, the internet. Again, we have to exercise discipline. We have to sustain ourselves for the long game. And short and sweet, when it comes to sleep, a couple of things. There's great value in white noise, and there's a great app called White Noise Generator. And there's great value in a totally dark room. Combine sleep with a sleep mask. Make the room as dark as you can. For all you first responders out there doing shift work, you've got to be in a totally dark room. And unless you spray paint the windows from the inside, the only way to make that room totally dark is to wear a good mask, a sleep mask. My grandson went off to college. He's heard my class many times. My gift to him on the way to college was 2 different kinds of sleep masks. See which one works for you. They're the 2 best rated ones on Amazon. See which one works for you. Promise me you'll use it every night. No problem. Yes, sir. He comes home. Hey, have you been sleeping? Yes, sir. Hey, are you using your mask? Yes, sir. I mean, if I love that kid, I want to keep him alive. The major things most likely to kill him, the 3 things most likely to kill him: suicide, traffic deaths, and opiate overdoses. And the major thing I can do for his wellness is make sure he's getting sleep and he's getting quality sleep. Little nuts and bolts that I give people, the snooze alarm is a waste of time. The snooze alarm is an evil little button that makes you relive the worst part of every day over and over again. Don't touch the snooze alarm. Set the alarm for 10 alarms, 6 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 6 o'clock. By the time you turn them off, you're up. Snooze alarm is doing physical harm to your body. Sleep in a totally dark room. Don't have more than 1 drink on the way to bed. Don't use alcohol to put yourself to sleep. There's nothing wrong with a nightcap. I'm a huge fan of the fitness trackers. And there was an online study on the ability of the various fitness trackers to actually track your sleep. And one of the top ones was a ring called the Oura. But the other top one was the Fitbit. And it's actually tracking your hours of sleep. And it will tell you, dude, you're an adult. You need at least 7 hours of sleep a night. You've been getting by on 4 hours sleep for the last month. You can't keep doing this. It will tell you. Wear the fitness tracker, download the app. It'll track your heart rate throughout the day, and that's useful data. It'll track your steps and your calories, but it will track your sleep. And it will tell you, then track your sleep across time. As an adult, you need at least 7 hours of sleep. You've got to make it happen. You've got to pace yourself for the long game. But go back to alcohol. Do an experiment. wear your fitness tracker, track your sleep, pound down 4 beers, and go to bed. See what it does to your sleep. You will fall quickly into a shallow sleep. You'll wake up in a couple hours and can't get back to sleep. That's what alcohol's doing to you. If you need help, and we all need some help sometimes, the doc's got things that can help. But don't use alcohol to put yourself to sleep. No more than 1 drink on the way to bed. It's terribly, terribly counterproductive for many reasons. Don't wake up in the night, have a smoke. It's one time to show some discipline. And use caffeine responsibly. They cut off caffeine shortly after lunch. Coffee and tea appear to be very good for us. I think coffee and tea are so good for us because the other stuff is so bad. Sodas, diet sodas, and the energy drinks are condensed poison. Those energy drinks are poison. The United States Armed Forces has been at war for 20 years. We're still in Iraq on our 21st year of war. For the first 15 years, the U.S. Army passed out energy drinks like water. They gave them us, we gave them the troops. Aren't we nice guys? And then 5 years ago, 2 major Department of Defense-wide studies on the energy drinks. Today, for all practical purpose, there is a complete ban on issuing energy drinks to our troops. In an academic environment, the one taking the most energy drinks were the ones with the worst grades. In a tactical environment, the one pounding down the most energy drinks were the ones most likely not off on the job. All there is in that energy drink is a mega dose of caffeine and some stuff to make you metabolize it quickly. It will give you a 1 hour burst of physical ability, then you crash. Before an athletic event, 1 energy drink, not a bad idea, but then you're going to crash. Before a PT test, 1 energy drink, not a bad idea, but then you crash. The second one feels good for 5 minutes, but all you're doing is building up your tolerance to caffeine and putting mega doses of caffeine in your body. No more than 1 energy drink. It'll keep you going for an hour, and then you will crash. Use caffeine responsibly. Coffee and tea, about 1 or 2 cups of coffee and tea at breakfast, 1 or 2 at lunch, then switch to decaf. Have all you want, and then it's there for you when you need it. You're changing shifts, you have extended operations, it's there for you when you need it. So that sleep dynamic, this global epidemic of sleep deprivation, suicides, traffic deaths, drug overdoses, just do online searches for all those and you'll see them. And why is this not being screamed from the mountainside? Why isn't the video game industry? Why isn't, Netflix? Why isn't Facebook telling you this? Because they want to sell their product. But my dad started smoking in 1940 when he was 5 years old. Plunked a nickel on the counter, bought his first pack of, candy, we all know that. Candy rots your teeth. Cigarettes are good for you. They believe that. Because the industry lied. Cigarettes are good for you. It's his money. He wants to buy cigarettes. Better than candy. We all know candy rots your teeth. And 55 years later, those cigarettes finally killed my dad. But all they wanted to do was sell their product. They didn't care they were selling it to 5-year-olds. They fought, the whole fight with tobacco was to stop selling this stuff to children. And they fought tooth and nail, decade after decade, over one thing, to keep selling their substance to children and to deny any responsibility for the harm that it might cause. That's where we are today with all those global industries and the predatory practices selling this stuff to us. I got a lot of people out that don't like me much. The Antifa, defund the police people. We just got a whole bunch more hate mail from them recently. We got the video game industry don't like me much, but the kids out there on the front lines putting their life on the line for us every day. We're able to give them some information that can be of value because we love them. Yeah,
it's super touching where you're able to actually tell us the actual critical issues that first responders deal with and people within the emergency services, right? And having an understanding that sleep is essential when you're in this industry, when you're in that environment, right? And the thing that you kind of really touched on the most about sleep and opioid overdose, do you feel that the police services and law enforcement agencies, the reason why you see these suicides going up, it could be a result of this? Absolutely. Right? Do you think that it could relate to the sleep, relate to the bad diet, and bad lifestyle?
Ask yourself, what is the new factor? My dad was a cop and he did a lot of overtime, a lot of extra hours. The cops always work themselves into the dirt. Mm-hmm. EMS, but what's the new factor? Long hours, we need to get that under control. We need to mandate that. But what is the new factor? It was never there before. And Instead of going home and sleeping, we're going home and playing video games, or going home and binge watching shows. So we're going home and we're on the internet all night long, on social media. You can't keep doing that. Again, long hours and stress is not new. What is new is that we're not sleeping when we get the chance. And then, we haven't even begun to talk about the murder rate is being held down by medical technology. People who try to explain the problem in terms of the number of murdered people are misrepresenting the situation. It's kind of like talking about minimum wage without allowing for inflation. Anytime people don't, we had more dead people a decade ago. Well, look at medical technology saving lives. It's more complex than that. So things are bad today. Things are scary bad. Violence is up to levels we've never seen before. These are traumatic times, and the people who are in the front lines, they need the best we got to give them. And remember, before you put your child's mask on, you put your mask on first. Before you help anybody else survive, you got to survive for yourself. And as we love our families, we love our way of life, as we love all those people that are in our hands, in our lives are in our hands every day, and we got to give 100%. And that means taking the time to take care of yourself. If you're playing those addictive games, if you're binge watching those shows, if you're on social media all night, time out. What's really important? Is your job important? Your health important? Your family important? Or is that game important? Decide now. If that game's what's really important, is cool. Quit your job, move to your parents' basement, draw unemployment, buy a Johnny economy-sized bag of Cheetos, play games all night long. Millions of people are doing that. But you want to have a life. You have to uphold your oath as a peace officer, as a first responder. You want to uphold your responsibility to your family. You got to get those games under control. Whatever it is that's stopping you from getting sleep, you got to get it under control. People look at me like a deer in the headlights. Oh, ooh, dude, you're talking straight to me. It's cool. Nobody ever told you that, but now you know. And you got to get it under control. And, Ryan, I've got a pretty good social media following. When this is available, I'll put it out on my social media, because I think this is the best 1 hour condensation of my stuff I've ever done. And I think you've given us the opportunity to get the word out and maybe help save some lives and help people through these tragic, violent, scary times.
No, and everything that you've been telling me and sharing, and it's really enlightening to know that there is alternative health methods for people to be successful within the job itself. And you're giving tips as to what is essential, right? We're in a pandemic where it's a mental health pandemic where, people are losing lives. People are not having the essential services that they need to be successful. And me, myself, like learning all of this is actually helping me, right? Because, it's changing a lot of my habits as an individual, but also as an officer, right? And I think that with your advice and what you're sharing is essential for first responders. I think it's essential for those that are risking their lives every day and putting their self first before someone else. And I couldn't say any more. Like, it was a pleasure having the opportunity to really speak to you and really be real about the whole situation and understanding that, yes, social media is a problem. YouTube is a problem. Netflix is a problem. And we need to understand that it is the new smoking. It is the new way of damaging your body. If you can go back and give your 18-year-old self the piece of advice, what would it be? And it would probably be sleep, most likely, right? And I think that someone needs to understand that, and everybody needs to understand that if you need to be in this career, you need to love yourself and take that time for you. And I hope that our listeners can really hear this. And it's really special to be able to gain insight from you and the expertise and sharing true stories about your life. And it's really touching. And I thank you so much for taking your time to speak with me. It's incredible. It really is special.
Good luck and keep up the great work, Ryan. You got to believe you're touching lives, saving lives every day. And all you folks who listen to this podcast, again, we give you our respect, our honor and glory, because you're out there doing the job every day and trying to improve yourself. And you're not satisfied with a 5-minute soundbite on TV. You're seeking deeper levels of knowledge, and that's a beautiful thing. So both of us salute you. And Ryan, thanks a lot. Stay hard, stay safe, and believe in who you are and believe in what you do.
Thank you very much.